He is going for broke. Drew Pearson. He got it. Touchdown.
All right. Welcome into Now About Them Cowboys, episode number 3. This is a Toilets to Titles production, and I am here this morning. Happy Sunday, but it is evening for him. He had a blessed Sunday, I believe. That's my guy Andrew Campey at Andrew Campey on the Twitter. Camp was cooking.
Yeah, no, it's so weird because like in the past when we've had a chat, it's always been kind of like you've been going later into your night, and it's kind of been sort of like midday to me. And so it's kind of like we've always been out of whack, but not too out of whack. And then here we are now. You're literally, getting up and starting your day, and here's me pretty much ready for bed. So it's a bit crazy, but any time's a good time to talk Cowboys, right?
Yeah, man, and it's Sunday for you, Sunday for me. So it's like the International Football Day, right? So I mean, that's got to be tough for you. Like I can't imagine. So I went to California in September this past year. It was the week after Dak got hurt, the weekend that we played the Bengals. So I'm in a jacuzzi, 10 a.m. in the morning, watching a football game. It was awesome. So in New York, like, in East Coast time, the first game started at 1 p.m. And I keep myself busy in the morning. I'm doing chores around the house, like I'm twiddling my thumbs. And then the game started at 1. I love the early game. So having a game at 10 a.m. was absolutely incredible. But I can't imagine what is a Sunday slate of NFL games like for Andrew Campey and the rest of the Australian population that enjoys the NFL.
Well, so that's the crazy thing with trying to figure out the difference in daylight savings that's going on everywhere. And so like basically our games, our day, if we want to start watching, can start at sort of 3 o'clock in the morning. And
3 a.m.
Yeah.
That's like, so that's the early game.
Yeah. And then, so the other games sort of kick off. So generally sort of, I try and sort of like, I focus on sort of like the later games. So, they start, I think, like 8 o'clock here generally this time, depending on daylight.
Usually, those are usually the better games anyway.
Yeah. And then, and then obviously the late game sort of rolls around later in the day after that. So, if the Cowboys are playing an interesting team, I'll get up and watch it. Otherwise, I'll try and record it and I'll try and watch it later in the day. So it's interesting. There are some diehards who get up every week, but it can really sort of like stretch out your week too. Cause you're doing that first thing Monday morning.
Right.
Like it makes your week stretch out a bit, but whatever we're going to do. Right.
So the 4 o'clock games at like 6 a.m. So say you're getting up at 6 a.m. for work, you're having your coffee, boom, you could start the 4 o'clock game, catch the end of the 1 o'clock game. So that's kind of got a cool ring to it. So then the 8:30 game would be starting at about 8:30. No, 10:30 for you guys, a.m. So that's interesting.
So basically it's 3-4ish, I think, is the first, like the early games, and then sort of like so 8. I think you're about right. I think about 8:30. I think.
Man,
from memory.
So those are usually like I hate the late games, especially if the Cowboys are playing. If the Cowboys aren't playing, you know what? I'm sorry, I don't hate them. I'll put them on, but then I'll shut them off at like halftime, and I'll catch the rest in the morning. But when the Cowboys are playing, if it's 8:30, I'm either going to go to bed pissed off if we lose, or I'm going to go to bed like I can't go to bed because I'm so fired up that we won, because it's usually a big opponent. And then it like completely messes up my Monday. But the Monday's a lot easier when we win. If we lost, on national TV in front of everybody, Monday's usually a lot tougher for me.
Yeah, my partner always says to me, she says, whenever I finish up work for the day on Mondays, if I come home and I've watched the game, I'll walk in the door and she'll say to me immediately, Cowboys lost, didn't they? I'm like, yep. You just know it doesn't. I don't even have to say anything. And it's like, yeah, the worst thing is you got to carry that around all day.
Not for nothing though. We haven't experienced that too much in the last few years. What I'm trying to look up our record right now. How many losses have the Dallas Cowboys had in 2022 and 2021? Let me look up. Not too many. So in 2022, the Cowboys lost 5 games, and I want to say it was the same in 2021. Let's see. In 2021, they lost 5 games. No, that's the wrong one. I'm sorry. 2021, they lost 5 games. So we've experienced that 10 times, and we've experienced victory during the regular season 24 times in the last 2 years. Not too shabby. And usually, right, I don't know when the last time the same team has won the division back-to-back years. So it's looking good for the Cowboys having an opportunity to win the division again this year. I know the Giants are in there. I don't know if Washington is somebody we need to consider, but it's looking like the Eagles might not, just based upon history. But let me get through some of the regular stuff I got to get through. If you want to check out the show on Twitter, it's at Toilets to Titles. I am on the Twitter at Coach Sheps. Campey is at Andrew Campey, Campey. Campey, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about toiletstotitles.com? I know I'm putting you on the spot, but that's your baby, man. So why don't you tell everybody why they should visit it and how to navigate it?
Oh, well, yeah, it's actually sort of interesting. I was thinking this morning when I was talking, like, just sort of more even toilets titles in general, and sort of discussing with people sort of where we started, and it was sort of obviously it started with the flagship show that we had, and from there was a discussion with you about having a website and being able to put some content up there, and we try to make sure that anything that we do on YouTube is moved over to the website. But in the last sort of like probably 12 months, we've really made sure that we've sort of upped our game as far as, like, there's now so many draft profiles on there. And then, we've had a bunch of guys go out to the draft combine. We've had guys going to the Senior Bowl. We're looking at getting some guys out to the draft. So these are guys who are actually there, and they're watching the practices, they're watching the players, and then they're writing all the content about it, and they're putting that all on the website. So there's so much stuff on there to go through. And then, with our YouTube channel, we're really trying to make sure that, we're really trying to build on that concept of quality, not quantity. And what we're really doing is making sure that we're bringing the content that people want. And we're trying to work with, the good people in the industry.
Sorry about that.
What are you watching? Some other YouTube channel behind the scenes?
I'm sharing our YouTube channel and Dallas Cowboys pages, so we're gonna see some Dallas Cowboys fans pop in here. I apologize.
Oh, good. But yeah, no, and so like what we're trying to do, and we've done in the past, is really sort of make sure that we work with obviously the guys at Draft Countdown, and really like
Nation.
and then the DWZ, the Dynasty Warzone guys as well, and sort of make sure that we're really kind of bringing in different ideas, different thoughts, and just like bringing out quality content to everyone. And it's like, so you can go to toiletstotitles.com, you can check out our YouTube, make sure you follow us on Twitter, make sure you find us on Facebook, all that stuff. And it's like, it's just an amazing sort of like breadth of stuff now. If there's something that you want, like if you're interested in college, you can come and we'll point you in the right path for college. If you're interested in, I kind of think of myself more as like a veteran kind of NFL guy. I'm more interested in the players that are actually already in the league. So it's kind of good that we've got guys not only looking at the draft and who's coming in this, but then, those guys who love the Devy stuff as well. So it's kind of just amazing the amount of different information that's coming in, and we're trying to make sure that we can get it to people in the best way possible. So
yeah,
that's the interesting part of the moment, is we've got the information there, just getting it out the right way.
Man, yeah, you're right. And we got guys, Nino and CFB Nation, KT, they're talking about high school players. Obviously, Shane at Draft Countdown talking about high school players. So yeah, we have like you come to us and we have the path to navigate you to exactly where you need to go. We have a lot of that content on our website. If you have Apple Podcasts, it'd be greatly appreciated if you went there, threw us a 5-star review. Even if you like watching us on YouTube, if you have access to it, if you don't mind subscribing on Apple Podcasts, again, the review. If you want to get into our Frankenstank Listener League, which is absolutely bananas. We're going in year 4. We haven't even started our discussion yet because we've been so busy talking draft. But as soon as draft season ends, we go right into Frankenstein season, and it's going to be crazy. So if you want to get in there, throw us a 5-star Apple review. It gets you in. If you want to get in for free, throw us like something phenomenal and that 5-star Apple review. And make sure you DM it to me on Twitter at Coach Shep so I can look at it, and then I can get your details to make sure I get you in there. Also, we have a Gilded chat where we're doing mock drafts all the time. George is running Mock Draft Laboratory where he's going to be doing tons of mock drafts, like usually Redraft or Dynasty on Sleeper, and we fill those in the chat. So if you want to get in there, and then we discuss them as they're going on in the chat. And we also have just regular fantasy football discussion in there. And then we're also doing some NFL draft mock draft where I'm bringing in analysts from other sites to help us. And that's in the laboratory as well. So you want to get in there. If you want to support the show, patreon.com/toilets to titles. And if you're on the YouTube, like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff helps the algorithm. We're creeping in on 1,000 subs. We're at 961 right now. So we're 39 away. We're pushing out the content. We got all sorts of stuff on there to try to get you informed and keep you in the NFL bubble throughout the offseason, because the worst part of the offseason is it's the offseason, right? Football's gone. But what I always say, it's the season of optimism. So we have anything you're looking for to help you be optimistic, right? We're going to be real with you. We're going to help to try to keep you optimistic, and we're going to feed you, in spoonfuls, NFL content throughout the offseason. We're going to just keep going for you. So with that, I do want to announce this morning, usually I make a bet. This morning I put $40 on the Dallas Cowboys to win the Super Bowl. So $540. So they were good odds. So here's hoping that works out. I was scrolling through Twitter, and Joe knows, big Giants fan. He does the Giants show, which is every Wednesday night. Also my cousin, good dude. Someone asked a question in their prime, who is better, Romo or Eli? And he said Eli. So he loves Romo. I think that's bananas. I would take Romo over Eli, and then give me Eli's defense. Those years that Eli won a Super Bowl, I don't even think it's close. I think Eli was great in the playoffs. I think he was better in the playoffs because he was even keel. So that's not necessarily a plus either. It's incredible that, like, when things went bad for him, because they also went bad, he didn't tail off. He just stayed even keel. But to me, 10 times out of 10, give me Tony Romo. Like, if I'm starting a team. What are your thoughts, Campey? Unbiased.
Yeah, well, I'm going to just have a quick break for 2 seconds here, and I've just seen Nate come up in the chat. So Nate's got child number 2 now. So
Max.
I figured he'd probably be up because depending on how good kids sleep, you're generally up pretty early in the morning. So congratulations to Nate and the whole family. But yeah, like I think Tony Romo is one of those quarterbacks who gets stuck in that category of didn't win the big one, so all of a sudden he sucks. And I think it's people sort of forget that it's a team sport. And like I think he sort of ended up, it felt that to a certain extent, I mean, probably not in his early years, but I feel towards the end, got kind of stuck with a coach who was probably pretty vanilla and not really getting the best out of the team. And
while that was going on, Romo evaded the vanilla-ness, if that's a word, by him running the offense.
And I always say, like, the amazing thing about Romo is a guy could come in and then all of a sudden he would, his game would be elevated because of Romo. And there's only certain quarterbacks, right? Yeah, there's only certain quarterbacks can do that. I don't look back at the failings of the Cowboys during that time and think it's Romo's fault. I just think that there was just, I think there was other times that we could have had certain players, like D-Ware is, D-Ware's a Hall of Famer, but there were certain times where I felt like we were getting sort of in the playoffs, we were doing pretty well, and our defense just wouldn't step up and get that kind of sack or anything that we needed. So I think you can look at and go, as a team, it would have been nice that if they had got even a bit closer to a Super Bowl. But I don't think that's a Tony Romo issue. I think that's a Cowboys organization issue, to be honest.
Yeah, and then, the Will McClay years, I don't know when he came on to the Dallas Cowboys, but the talent evaluation definitely took a rise towards the end of Tony Romo's career. If you look at what they had around him, they had Terrell Owens, but the Roy Williams trade was a flop. DeMarcus Ware was great. Jerry actually wanted to take DeMarcus Ware over Sean Merriman. Parcells wanted Merriman. But still, there was a lot of, there were some stars, but there were a lot of gaps. I think this team is a lot more well-rounded. I think some of those Giants teams were a lot more well-rounded. and it's a shame, obviously Romo was snake bitten in the playoffs, but again, like you said, he would take average talent and make it look phenomenal. Like he took guys off the scrap heap, made them money. Like they would come to Cowboys for 1 year wide receivers, and then like Laurent Robinson go to the Jaguars after having like 1,100 yards receiving, and then boom, getting paid, and then you never heard of him again because he went there and nothing happened. And Romo, he ran the offense. Dude was brilliant, like absolutely brilliant. But so that was just that we didn't even plan on talking this. I would take Romo over Eli, hands down, 10 out of 10 times. So all right, let's talk about Brandin Cooks. So in the first episode we did, we were talking about Odell Beckham, DeAndre Hopkins, and I mentioned Brandin Cooks because I knew we were doing research on him last year around the trade deadline. Something was very close, and the Texans rose their price, and we didn't do it. And then Brandin Cooks sat out the next week because he was so frustrated with the Houston Texans. And I mentioned it would make more sense. It's a more Dallas Cowboys move to go Brandin Cooks. The following week, we were excited about DeAndre Hopkins, the possibility of Odell Beckham, but it turns out, what did the Cowboys do? They traded fifth for Brandin Cooks. All right. 1 week after trading a compensatory fifth for Stephon Gilmore. Then you hear, because he's coming in with $18 million. Then everyone's like, oh, why are we doing this? We had Amari Cooper. Well, then the Texans pick up $6 million to the $18 million. So and he goes from being $2 million less to what Amari Cooper would have cost us. So now he's $8 million less to what Amari Cooper was going to cost us. And then there was a switch they could flip in his contract that converted $8 million to signing bonus. So now he's coming in at what, like $6 million for 2022. So he's $14 million less than Amari Cooper. And Brandin Cooks, last year he missed some games, still averaged 12.3 yards per reception, 699 yards. But in 2021, with the Houston Texans, 90 receptions, 1,037 yards. And they were a disaster in 2021. That was the year, Deshaun Watson, what is he doing? The year prior, 1,100 yards receiving. So he had, 2 of the last 3 years, he won over 1,000 yards with the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans were not a phenomenal franchise. His touchdown numbers, not great. He had 6.6, but again, that yards per reception, 12.3, 11.5, 14.2, a career yards per reception, 13.7. I heard a stat where he was a wide receiver, 1, 2, 3, 4. So he had 6,000 receiving yard seasons, and he's never made a Pro Bowl yet. Which is, I didn't write this number down, but it was like an interesting stat. There are only a few receivers ever to have that many 1,000-yard receiving yard seasons and not make a Pro Bowl. But what were your thoughts on Brandin Cooks coming into the Cowboys, and how do you think he fits in?
Oh, I think it's a phenomenal move. Like, as I sort of mentioned last week, or we both mentioned last week, the concern there with Odell is, what's his injury history going to be like now compared to, going forward in the future? And the money he wants. I mean, I think last we heard he didn't want $4 million. So, how much more than $4 million did he want to go to? We don't know. But, if we're talking, similar money, well, I'm happy to chuck in a fifth for Cooks over Odell Beckham. And then the concern, obviously, again, with D-Hop is going to be the price involved there. So I think it's a perfect move, really. Like I think he probably said it best himself when he was asked about being traded multiple times. And rather than look at it in a negative way, he said, look, I think it's just great that, from my point of view, I can see that all these teams want me. And it's really kind of strange to see a guy who is clearly productive, and wherever he goes, he seems to, manage to get the yards, but he has been traded, multiple times now. Like, I just think it's just, you'd almost pencil him in now for 1,000 yards already, which is just like, to be able to go and get that for a 5th round pick. And then, as you said, for $6 million, it's just a really good move.
Yeah. And Stephon Gilmore and Brandin Cooks played together in New England. So they have a history. And Stephon Gilmore, he's been around the block as well. Played for Carolina, played for New England, played for Indianapolis. So these guys are both journeymen, but wherever they've landed, they've succeeded. That says something. That's important. So they come in. And then what I really, one of the things I like about this is we draft Jalen Tolbert last year in a third. And it's good to see he's been in the Dak yard training with Dak Prescott, which is the football field in Dak Prescott's yard. I've seen him in pictures. If you check out, go on Instagram if you have it, check out 40-Second Witness. He's like one of the big photographers for the Dallas Cowboys, and he gets a lot of the behind-the-scenes pictures. So I've been seeing pictures of all the, I think Peyton Hendershots out there. So the guys are working, Sean McKeon, and those are tight ends for the Cowboys. And Tolbert, this getting Cooks for a fifth. This might sound reverse thinking. This might sound like me just trying to talk myself into stomaching something, but getting Cooks for a fifth makes it easier to digest Tolbert for a third, not panning out year one. Because now, we get somebody who I think is going to pan out for a later round pick. Now we can continue to allow Tolbert to develop. We can't give up on that yet. And then you got to hope that Michael Gallup, 2 years returned from the ACL. I think you put Michael Gallup in a number 3 role. I think you're going to see him 700 yards receiving, and I think that's good enough. I think if Cooks goes for 1,000, CD goes for about 1,300, the tight ends combined for about 800. Gallup comes in for about 700. I think those are strong numbers because I think when Gallup is really good is when he is not the primary target and he's that third down receiver where it's like 3rd and 6 and he's running around 10 yards and coming back 8 and he's moving the chains, or he's the third look and Dak finds him in the back of the end zone on a fade route where we don't have to pepper him, but we can catch the DB sleeping. Because Gallup's got great body control, great hands. He's got a good rapport for Dak on those situations where we need to come down with the completion or we need to move the chains, and we can keep him in that role. We don't need to put him in a possession role. And then Cooks is great in those screens. So running those screens, that's forcing the safeties to come up. It's forcing the linebackers down. It's also going to open running lanes up for the running back. It's going to open running lanes up for the quarterback. And it's going to open things up for a guy like Michael Gallup who's stretching the field. Have you given up on Jalen Tolbert yet? I know I didn't put this on there. Have you given up on him, or you think this is actually something that might be able to benefit him in the long run?
Oh, yeah. No, look, I haven't given up on him yet, but it was interesting because we were obviously talking last week about who they were talking to at the Combine. And if you look back at the list, I think there was 3 or even possibly 4 first-round wide receivers that they were discussing. And you think now that's probably off the table, which is just another step towards essentially being able to take best person available when it comes around to their turn to pick, because, this, as you said, Gallup's probably better suited at this stage to a 3rd pick. So that second position was something that they were going to have to address either in the draft, which is a risky situation because, as you said, we've got a 3rd round pick who didn't sort of pan out first year, or they have to go try and find something in free agency, and then it's a question of you're paying more for Odell Beckham or whatever. So it's really sort of good from the point of view of not only have they found a productive player with really very few question marks, but it's also kept their options open for the first round. They can really just pretty much just go with whoever their heart desires, which is a pretty amazing place to be, really.
Yeah, and we're going to get there. We're going to talk about the depth chart. So the Cowboys right now, they have $16 million in cap space, which is great. I think that's still top 5 in the NFL currently. And then they have 10 coming post June 1st. And I believe most of that $10 million is going to go to the rookies. And I do think they're going to extend Dak. And we're going to see if they try to get into talks to extend CeeDee Lamb or Trayvon Diggs, which with the money, I think it'd be smart. Get that done now because the Michael Parsons deal is coming down the line. Bobby Wagner goes to the Seattle Seahawks, 1-year deal worth $7 million, which I'm not surprised. People were still holding their breath, waiting for Wagner to come to the Cowboys. Once the Cowboys brought back Leighton Vander Esch, I thought that was out the window because you still got Damone Clark. I think they could use another linebacker presence, but I don't think it's going to be another top-tier linebacker presence. I think you're going to see somebody in the 2nd and 3rd tier range who can challenge the rookie, the young, talented players in Damone Clark and Jabril Cox. Somebody who, if that doesn't pan out, they can bring this guy in. And probably somebody with a little bit of special teams availability because with Luke Gifford going over to Tennessee, that took a linebacker who also played some special teams. So I know they were interested there. Were you expecting anything with Bobby Wagner? Were you disappointed, or were you kind of just thinking that's par for the course?
No, well, I mean, it's quite similar to sort of like as we talked about last week with the sort of Zeke situation, which like obviously he's destined to leave now, but when you have a guy who sort of sits around for a while, then it does sort of become that case of they sort of can start thinking about where they're most comfortable, and I think Wagner started to think in his head, well, where am I comfortable? And, when that Seattle sort of conversation happened, I don't think it's probably shocking that he's going back there. I think it's probably, whether or not it's a 1-year deal and he ends his career after that, we don't know. But I think it's just, that he's comfortable there. And as you said, the Cowboys have kind of addressed the position to a certain extent. So, you don't want to be getting too, we've got a young team as it is, but you don't want to be getting too old at certain positions. You want to make sure that you got some youth. So I don't think that's going to be the fatal blow for the Cowboys this year.
No, I was surprised he went back to Seattle because I thought there were some issues between him and Pete Carroll. Usually just that organization recently hasn't done a good job of making their veterans happy on the way out the door. So I was definitely interested to see how that panned out. But now Dan Quinn, he heads to Iowa State for the Iowa State Pro Day, which defense coordinator heads there. He did that with Sam Williams last year, right, in Auburn. And I penciled Sam Williams in as a second-round selection. The Cowboys go ahead and take him. The guy he was interested in seeing at Iowa State was Will McDonald. He's a defensive end. He only had 6 sacks this season, but the dude is an absolute freak. If you're familiar with Bruce Feldman's freak list, he had Will McDonald number 5 overall. So that's very high praise. His numbers, he didn't compete at the combine, 6'3", 239 pounds. So that's light, not very good. But his vertical was 36 inches, broad jump, 1,100, 40-yard dash, 4.66, and his 3-cone was 6.79, which his RAS, relative athletic score, was 9.72. That's phenomenal. That's very good. So this dude is an absolute freak. Somebody I think that the Cowboys believe in, and I think Dan Quinn believes in. If he didn't believe in him, he wouldn't be spending his time going out there and checking him out. He was first team All Big 12, 2020, 2021, 2022. He was at the Senior Bowl. We all got to see him like first, we were right there on the scene. We got to see him there, and he absolutely crushed it. He was strong. First team All-American in 2021, second team All-American through CBS in 2021. And then he was Big 12 co-defensive lineman of the year in 2021. So the stats are there. Pass rusher, tons of potential. Dan Quinn wanted to check him out. He didn't get home a lot. Like I said, he only got home 6 times last year. But Dan Quinn, work with him one-on-one. And I think this is a guy that he thinks he could work with at the next level, and he could turn him into a big-time pass rusher, because we saw somebody else, a la Micah Parsons, who wasn't necessarily a big-time pass rusher, and that's because he played off-ball most of the time at Penn State. But I think, this is a bit of a project, and this is telling. If Dan Quinn's going there, he's interested. So this is somebody you could draw like a dotted circle around his name, and then you could fully circle it if we land him on draft day. But what were your thoughts about Dan Quinn heading out there and checking him out?
Well, yeah, so my question for you was going to be whether or not you see them keeping him as a defensive end, or do you think that they like at the Senior Bowl, was he moved around at all between sort of defensive end and linebackers, or was he mainly lining up on the line?
Mainly lining up on the line. I think this guy, he's going to be an edge defender, and I think with DeMarcus Lawrence, he's 31, 32. I think he's only got 1 year left on his deal. I think they're looking to replace him. And I think they're looking to get the guy who can come in next. And so that kind of leads us into the next thing. Dante Fowler, he comes back on a 1-year deal. So he's coming back. And last year he had 6 sacks. So it's a low cost deal. I don't have the numbers exactly in front of me, but there's incentives for playing time, for showing up in the offseason and doing work, and then for getting those sacks. So I like that. That's a 1-year thing. And I think I know he'll contribute. I know he'll get to the quarterback. He's got the draft pedigree. He played with Dan Quinn in Atlanta. So I like that. I think that's a good signing. I think we're in good shape along the defensive line. I know we brought in, and I think we're in good shape across the board with bringing in Ronald Jones. He's not a star, but he's somebody who could be a backup to Tony Pollard. And I think we're going to go into the depth chart, but I think we're pretty much comfortable going into the draft. But you have a mea culpa for last week. So let's talk about that before we get into the depth chart.
Well, I mean, so you've hit the nail on the head, and it's sort of I sort of walked away last week sort of thinking, you gave me the question, who would I like the Cowboys to kind of target? And it's I hope that the Cowboys fans aren't getting too sort of bored by the Cowboys offseason, because there'd be so many teams who would love to be in the Cowboys position right now, where they could literally pick anyone in the first round. Like their options are open. So like, in an ideal world, I was thinking about it. And so realistically, I think probably the biggest hole that I see at the moment is still going to be that interior offensive line spot that we're missing. So, like in a dream world, if a Skorinsky from Northwestern dropped, he's projected to go, I think, about 9th or 10th in the draft. So, if he starts dropping down to sort of the, mid-15s or whatever because of that discussion of whether or not he's a tackle or he's an interior lineman, if the Cowboys could move up and get someone like him, then, I think that would be great. But if they're not going to make that move, then I feel like they're just in that position. Just wait and see who steps down. And, like last week, I would have said it would be, Bijan Robinson or Smith and Jigba or, I mean, even the two tight ends, which we're going to talk
Michael Mayer, Dalton Kincaid.
We're going to talk pretty soon about the mock draft. Some mock drafts have them going to the Cowboys or going lower, and then other ones have them going in the top 10 or top 15. So I think they've just put themselves in that position that they can just pretty much pick a player. So I know it doesn't sound sexy when, someone says, who do you want them to pick? And the answer is anyone, but that's really what it is.
You want them to take the best player, which is
exactly.
I think that's the position they wanted to put themselves in, and they did a very good job. So let's talk about the depth chart right now. So we got CeeDee Lamb in the slot, Brandin Cooks outside, Michael Cooks outside. Behind them, you got Jalen Tolbert, you got Simi Fehoko, tall field stretcher, Stanford going into his 3rd season. They've been working on him. And you got Kevontae Turpin, who's kind of a wild card weapon, and he is somebody who could get work, in the special team. So they lost Noah Brown, which he was kind of their block and wide receiver. So one of these young guys like Jalen Tolbert, if you could step up and come into that role as the 4th guy and you could get your nose in there and get dirty and block, you're going to earn some playing time because there's an opening there. Offensive line, there's a little bit of question marks. Tyler Biadasz was a Pro Bowler at center, but I think was fan-driven. I don't know if he's an all-pro type player or a Pro Bowl type player, but he was there last year. He's in the middle. And then Tyron Smith coming back. It'll be interesting to see what we do target in the draft because Tyler Smith last year slid to right tackle because Terrence Steele was hurt. And then Tyler played left tackle. But now, as far as the depth chart goes, with Tyron coming back with big incentives in his contract to do some playing time. So we have Ultra Cowboy in the chat. He says 30 days to Dalton Kincaid. It's looking very possible. It is looking very possible. We're going over the depth chart right now, and then we're gonna talk through some mocks. But the tight end is a little bit of a glaring hole right now. But so Tyron Smith, he could be the swing tackle depending on how we draft, or he could be the anchor at left tackle until, inevitably he gets hurt, which has kind of been the thing. I would love to see him for 17 games, but I don't know if that's going to happen. So Tyron Smith, Tyler Smith, Biadasz, Zach Martin, and then Terrence Steele. Terrence Steele is ahead of schedule. I saw a video of him, taking pass protection steps. So he tore his ACL. They're saying he's going to be back from training camp, and I'm not surprised because that guy, what the biggest thing I've heard out of, Cowboys Nation from people, at the headquarters from the last 3 or 4 years is how hard that guy works. Like nobody was expecting anything from him. And he turned himself into a starting caliber player just by showing up, getting to work. So Terrence Steele, he's going to be back early. Okay. So if he comes back, like you said, I still got questions with the interior of the offensive line because once Tyron goes down, and inevitably Tyler Smith also just long-term, he's going to be out there at the left tackle. All right. And Zach Martin's not getting any younger. I think he's 32, 33 years old. So, we're going to need somebody on the inside. Tight end, Jake Ferguson, who we drafted the 4th, Peyton Hendershot, Sean McKeon. So we got guys serviceable, and all together, I think they can amount to a solid tight end. But there's definitely a possibility we go ahead and draft one. Do I want to take one in the first round? I don't. The reason I don't want to take a tight end in the first round is because first-round tight ends take a while to pan out. And we've seen from our own experience and from other teams' experience, you could take a guy in the 3rd or 4th round and he could come in, he can contribute and he could turn into something. You know?
I mean, that's you can look at like a Hawkinson and go, okay, well, Hawkinson, he's looking pretty good for his draft capital, but then you look at, would you be happy if they drafted an OJ Howard? Would that, would you sit there and be happy with an OJ Howard? It's, an Austin Hooper. Would you be happy if they drafted a Hooper? Right. Like what are you expecting from your first round pick? It's
right.
That
I like
doesn't
Laporta.
Really feel.
I like Laporta from Iowa. I do.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, he's probably like a 3rd, 4th round guy. So I would enjoy that. We have Ultra Cowboy in here. He said he believes the Cowboys will draft Steve Avila. That's a guard out of TCU. He's a mauler. He's a tough dude. and give them an option if Biotish leaves in 2024. So I don't know if he has center flexibility, but if he does, something I didn't know. You can put that in the comments, but that's great if he does have that. I like John Michael Schmitz in the first, or if we trade back up into the second round, but that would be a very solid selection. So again, when it comes to offense, we got Tony Pollard, Dak Prescott. I think we're sound this year at quarterback and running back. We could go for running back. We got Ronald Jones, but we don't have to. We don't have to take one early. I'm hoping we take one in the mid rounds. So we're saying in the offense, interior offensive line, and we're saying it's tight end. Now we go to the defense. DeMarcus Lawrence, defensive end, getting old. Okay, but right now, today, we could play with him. Neville Gallimore and Osa Odighizuwa. I want one of them to start. I don't want both of them to start. I'm hoping that we lock up Hankins. But right now, the glaring need to me is the nose tackle. I think we need that run stuff in nose tackle. Hopefully we bring one back. So right now, interior offensive line, tight end, nose tackle. We got Micah Parsons, Van Der Esch, Damone Clark. I'm feeling good about our linebackers. We got Dorrance Armstrong, who could put his finger in the dirt. He's our other defensive end. I'm feeling good about him. We extended him. Now, corners, Stephon Gilmore, Trayvon Diggs, Jordan Lewis, Deron Bland. I'm feeling very good at corner. I wouldn't mind going with the corner for in the case we let Trayvon Diggs walk in a year or two, which I personally, I wouldn't mind doing just because the money it's going to cost to keep him. I think he's great, but I don't think he's like that legitimate. I want that lockdown corner who's consistently, shutting down wide receiver ones, and he's also sticking his nose in there in the run game. And I don't think that's Trayvon Diggs, and I think we're going to have to pay him like that. So I would consider letting him off. But right now, today, corners are very strong, and then our safeties. We don't have to say a thing about our safeties. Jaron Kearse, Donovan Wilson, Malik Hooker, Israel Mukuamu, who actually looked pretty good playing corner last year. And I know Kearse and Hooker are both free agents after this year. So we might have to look at it next year, and we could probably maybe draft a depth guy. But right now, I think our glaring needs, interior defensive line. We could use a pass rusher because DeMarcus Lawrence is getting old. Interior offensive line and tight end. Would you agree?
You're not drafting a first round kicker?
I mean, we could use a kicker. I didn't even mention kicker, but we absolutely need a kicker. It needs to be done.
We don't have one currently, but yes, I think that would be a free agency pickup at some point. But I think you're pretty much spot on. And what was interesting, if you look at the scouting list of who the Cowboys spoke to at the Combine, it seemed to be there was a couple of offensive linemen in the first round, and then there was a whole chunk in that third and fourth round. So I suspect that they will do what the Cowboys usually do and get at least one, maybe two mid-round kind of developmental guys who they think probably have a bit of potential to maybe, fill some gaps now and then plan in the future. So I would suspect, I'm not sure that they would go, offensive line in the second round, but I definitely think third and fourth. I think that's where I would look to see them loading up on offensive talent if required along that line.
Yeah. And then, so we have Ultra Cowboy in here. He says he thinks Tyler Smith is the left tackle and Tyrone will be the swing tackle. That can be the case if we draft an interior offensive lineman, but it's going to be hard to see that out. So also with Steele being hurt, we could also see Tyler start at left tackle, Tyrone start at right tackle until Steele comes back. But I'll need to see a few things fall into place before I'm ready to cement Tyler there. Do I think the Cowboys should? Yes, I do think they should. But I also think they think this is Tyron Smith's last year. And I think they may try to make it work and put him in the best spot to succeed. And if they think left tackle is the best spot for him to succeed and for the team to be successful, I do think they'll cement him there. They'll plant him there, and then they'll push Tyler out once Tyrone can't do it anymore, and then they'll just move on with that being the case. And Ultra Cowboy saying Avila played center in 2022. So I watched film of him at left guard. So that's he allowed no sacks while playing left guard this year. So that's very solid. And he said he wants so Ultra Cowboy wants Avila in the first. Sam Laporte, who I mentioned from Iowa, I don't know if I'd take a tight end in the second round either, just because there is so much depth there. And then Kendry Miller from TCU. So you must be a big Texas guy. He's got a lot of, and Cowboys are high on them. Yeah, they are. It reminds me the way they're courting him, Vila. It reminds me of how they courted Will Hernandez from another Texas, I think it was UTEP that he was out of, and the Giants ultimately ended up drafting him. So let's go around the world before we wrap this thing up. Some mock drafts. So we have Mel Kiper. His last selection was Adetomiwa Adebaware. He is a defensive lineman out of Northwestern, 282 pounds, ran the 40 and 4.49. Fastest time of any player, over 280 pounds since 2006. Played 75% of his snaps at defensive end, but Mel thinks he's going to move into 3-tech. So you're going to see him replace a guy like Neville Gallimore, Osa Odigizua. He's still not the nose tackle we need, but if we bring in Hankins, we bring in a guy like that. He only had 9.5 sacks since 2021. But, again, this is another guy like Will McDonald. There's upside there. Daniel Jeremiah has the Cowboys selected Maisie Smith, defensive lineman, interior defensive lineman, which would be very interesting if we took an interior defensive lineman in the first round, given how much the Cowboys have not invested in defensive tackle in the first round. But he's 6'4", 323 pounds, 34 reps on the bench press, which led all defensive linemen. So this dude, I'm seeing a lot of love for Maisie Smith, which would be solid selection. First round possibility, second round also possibility. Shane Hallam, our friend from Draft Countdown, he has the Cowboys taking Michael Mayer out of Notre Dame, tight end, who was the consensus tight end 1 until about 2 months ago, where all these other tight ends just started pouring in. And Dalton Kincaid has been right on the cusp of being the tight end 1. Ryan Fowler has Kalijah Cansey, defensive lineman. He's a disruptor from Pittsburgh. He's a small guy, 6'1", so he is a penetrator. And I like this the most as best player available because I don't think he necessarily fits a need, but because we've been so well-rounded, he is so talented. On pass rushing downs, you could put him in there. And with him and Micah Parsons, it's going to be torture on the offense to try to get the ball off. They're going to have to get the ball off quickly because one of those guys are going to get home, and it will take some pressure off of Parsons. So do I think this is the biggest need to fill? No. But again, BPA, best player available, if he's down there at 26 to the Cowboys, I really like that. Another BPA, Pete Prisco out of CBS has the Cowboys selecting Bijan Robinson out of Texas. Another guy, is it necessarily a need? No. But he's at probably the safest skill position player in the draft. And I was talking about this to Nino. He's our, one of our college football analysts, draft analysts. I think that, you got Quentin Johnson, Jackson Smith and Jigba, CJ Stroud, Bryce Young. I'm thinking MLB, playing MLB the show over here. I'm calling Bryce Young, Bryce Harper, Anthony Richardson. Out of all these players, offensive skill position players, I think Bijan's the safest. If you get him at 26, I don't think he falls out of the top 15, though, to be safe. And then my mock draft I did recently, you'll be able to see it on toiletstitles.com. I had John Michael Schmitz from Minnesota, who can play guard, he can play center, and I think the flexibility there, and he was probably the best offensive lineman at the Senior Bowl. Again, we saw him there. I don't think he lost a rep at the Senior Bowl, and he would step in, and the Cowboys have showed when they took Travis Frederick at the end of the first. So this might be a trade back possibility, trade back a few, selections, get a pick later on in the draft. And this guy's going to come in. He can play guard. He can play center. He's going to start for you day one, and he's going to solidify the middle of the offense. So, Yeoman said the Cowboys did a lot of background work on Maisie. Yeoman's, I've been talking to him. He's been on the show before. He's probably coming on next week. So make sure you subscribe and stay tuned. I've been talking to Kyle. Kyle was in his bachelor party last week, so he couldn't make it. This week, he's working on the magazine for DallasCowboys.com, so he's tied up. It's probably next Sunday or the Sunday after, so stay tuned. But what do you think about all these mocks, Camp?
Yeah, look, it's interesting. I mean, I think you and I feel at the moment that it will be when that card goes in, it will be an offensive player. Whether or not that's the case, I'm not sure. I just think you just look at what Dan Quinn's put together. I think he would be looking at that defense and he'd be pretty happy going into the game now or the season now with that lineup. I don't think he would be jumping up and down on the table saying, I want some more defensive linemen. But I think our new offensive play caller, who also happens to be the head coach, is probably going to want at least one shiny new weapon for his offense. So I suspect that it's going to be an offensive player. You look at tight ends in the first round, and it's, as I said, it seems to be that thing where it's like you might get a Hockenson, but you also might get an OJ Howard, and it's sort of it just seems to be such a hard position to actually try and figure out who's going to be a star. You look at it and go, we've got Kelsey and Kittle up there who were not first round picks. And, we look at every year we sort of form this, these guys are going to be the ones who are going to turn the tight end position into this, there was a guy a couple of years ago in Atlanta, I think we spoke about last week. And it's, I still think he's got a lot of upside. And I think
situation there has been horrendous.
Yeah, I think if they called the Cowboys right now and said, give us your first round pick, I think the Cowboys would, say yes, hang up the phone and laugh for 20 minutes. But
Oregon State, he said, Luke, Ultra Cowboys in the chat said, don't sleep on Luke Musgrave. He's another guy. We're not sleeping over here. We're interested in him as well.
So, look, I think it's going to be really interesting, those first kind of 10 picks in the draft, because I think by then, let's say first 15 picks in the draft, because then I think we're going to understand whether or not anyone's made a play for Bijan or he's going to drop down the list. I think we'll see whether or not any tight ends are going to go early. And then also, what happens with the offensive linemen. There's a couple of good offensive linemen there that could go anywhere from 10 down to probably 30.
If Skoronski falls due to the fact that you're going to need to move him inside because of his arm, the arm length and some of the size measurables, like he's a guy I'd move up for. I don't think the Cowboys are going to move up in this class because, there's Osiris Torrance, there's Avila, John Michael Schmitz, and then even if you wait a little longer, Cody Mock, there's guys available, and they've put themselves in a position where they don't need to move up. But if he's still there around 20, I don't know how you don't.
No, and so, that's the thing, like, as we keep saying, it's just there's so many opportunities at the moment. Like they can just go in any direction. I think it will be offense. I would like if Bijan's there at their pick, just run it up and do it, because as I said, getting 5 years from a decent running back pending injury to me just makes so much sense in this lineup. But apart from that, just take the best person available. And I still think they're going to go at least one, maybe two offensive linemen from rounds 3 to 7. And then, from there, it'll probably just be, once again, best player available, because they don't have any particular holes. So they might end up getting a kicker in round 6 or round 7. You never know. But
they should have taken one last year. With Dicker being like, there were York, like there were guys there. They need to take one. Enough. The game, like you're costing yourself. Jerry doesn't have many more of these runs left. So you're costing yourself an opportunity. And also, like, he's probably taking time off his life worrying about this kicker situation. In the playoffs, that was a disaster. But let's finish with this. Talking about the tight end, I might be connecting the dots too deeply. I might be looking into this too deeply. And I know Ultra Cowboys saying Mike wants an athletic pass catch and tight end weapon. Personally, with Noah Brown gone, he was the pass blocking wide receiver, right? And he had to be on the field a lot because we had Dalton Schultz, who's a pass catching tight end. So that is taking up two positions. I think what the Cowboys should look for, and what hopefully they are looking for, is a pass catching, run blocking tight end. Somebody who can do both, so they don't have to waste one of their wide receiver positions with a guy who's primarily blocking. Okay?
Yeah. And as we mentioned, they did get a guy who's pretty handy as a number 2 wide receiver, and they have a decent number 3 wide receiver and obviously an alpha wide receiver. So realistically, if you are going to come in as a tight end, you can be the 4th or even, the 5th if they want to. They've got Pollard there, so you could be the 5th option in the offense. We don't need them to come in and be the number 2 option. So we're not going to be Kansas City tomorrow. So right. I think if you can get someone who's a really good blocker,
right,
who is a safety valve when needed, then I think, if you can get that in year 1 and then in year 2, they sort of, step up and become that 3rd option, maybe 2nd option, then I don't think that's a bad play. As I said, I guess it's just it depends on what's on the board at the time, because it just seems to be, it's an interesting position, tight end.
I know Musgrave and Kincaid are both flashy because you put them in this offense with Schultz gone, they'll step right into his role. They'll get 700 yards receiving. So I get it. That's flashy. That's excellent. But you bring in a guy like Michael Mayer, Darnell Washington, you Sam Laporta, who may only get you 500 yards receiving, but they're not going to leave the field. They're not going to drop the ball. They're not going to leave the field. They're going to help you in the run game. And then also defenses aren't like, as far as tendencies go, they're not going to see you switching these guys out, and they're not going to be able to kind of guess what you're doing. When we were bringing in Noah Brown, I'm sorry, but defenses knew, Cowboys are running the football, and there's a little bit to the Cowboys in the past few years running the football. When we're running the football, and us being okay with knowing, because it's demoralizing when it's coming and you can't stop it. But just because that's demoralizing and that's worked in the past doesn't mean we need to stick to that route. Let's get a guy who's excellent blocker, sure hands. He's going to be where Dak needs him to be, right? But he doesn't necessarily have to be a 4-5 athlete. He doesn't have to be a field stretcher. You went ahead, you brought in Brandin Cooks, like you got Michael Gallup, you got CeeDee Lamb. I just want somebody who is very well rounded. And then I was going to wrap it up with that, but Ultra Cowboy says go sign Robbie Gould. I'm okay with that too, especially if you're making a run. Go get Robbie Gould. Go get me a kicker who is safe. Somebody who just make his kicks. I can go get a cup of coffee or a glass of water when he's kicking and not have to worry about it. But Ultra Cowboy said Musgrave 6'6", 250, 4'6", with wide receiver feet, plus his dad played quarterback in the NFL. Yeah, I mean, he's a stud. I mean, Musgrave's a stud. Kincaid's a stud. They're all very strong, very sound tight end prospects, but those are, vertical threat tight end prospects. We might end up with one because we know that Dak likes that. He's succeeded with those guys. So, Camp, do you have anything to say before we wrap this up, my guy?
No, I think after our discussion tonight, it does really feel like tight end is going to be there. Whether or not, I think after the draft, we were discussing either them taking a tight end or passing over one. So it just feels the way that's the way that the draft's going to fall. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Where are you going to be draft night when the Cowboys select?
That's a very good question. So
you're going to be here on the Toilets and Titles Network, hopping in the stream. Am I right?
Well, yes, you say that, but I think we'll figure out it's Thursday your time, round one.
Yeah. It's like the Cowboys will probably pick like 10 o'clock.
So it'll be Friday for me. So I think I'm going to try and I might try and book my day off then, just to really be able to enjoy it, because it's one of those things that the draft and the Super Bowl is something that if you can get some time off, it's really kind of a fun kind of thing to be able to sit here and we have that sort of stretch where we can watch it at a reasonable hour. So for us, it doesn't matter if it stretches. And, obviously we were probably the only sort of place that was a bit disappointed when they started stretching it out more, because, we were like, oh, let it go longer in the day. That's fine. But it'll be good to jump on the telecast and have a chat about it in real time. And then, by that stage, we'll really know what's going on. So I think I'm going to be on in the late rounds. So by the time I'm on, we'll be really zeroing in on our targets.
Yeah, so Toilets and Titles, we're doing a YouTube live stream during the draft, and I'm going to be the MC. I'll be on the whole stream, and then we're going to be bringing fans, from the network that are fans of certain teams. They're going to be on. We're going to have somebody on for like the first 5 picks, then pick 5 through 10, then 10 through 15. So I'll be on. Nino will be on to start it. We'll just be rolling people in and out so we can have some fresh takes throughout. And I see Ultra Cowboy says he'll be drunk in KC. We're applying for our media credentials, but we already have. So we might be there as well. Ultra Cowboy, reach out to me on Twitter. Anybody in here, if you're on Twitter at Coach Steps, I want to get you in the Gilded chat so we could talk outside of here. And if you're not on Twitter, reach out to us, toiletsandtitles@gmail.com. I'll get you the link to our Gilded chat because we would like you to join the Title Tribe so we can take part in some mocks together. We could talk some football together, and we can continue this conversation outside of the YouTube stream. But with that, it has been a fun first 3 episodes of Now About Them Cowboys. We have tons of other content. We have tons of other content on the YouTube channel. So subscribe, check it out. We're talking fantasy football. We're talking NFL draft. So all that good stuff. But Campy, as far as our show goes, we're at 3 episodes. And I believe like I say, like after 5, you're rolling. So we're getting close, man. It has absolutely been a pleasure. I hope you have a great evening. I hope I have a great day. I hope everybody out there, I just told myself they're good. I hope everybody out there has a great day. Have yourself a cup of coffee, sit back. It's beautiful. It's spring. Like things are good. All right. So we will catch you all.